The Johnson family takes a DNA ancestry test during a Sunday dinner as a fun family activity. Weeks later, one result triggers an FBI alert linking their father, a beloved Detroit auto plant retiree, to a 1986 double homicide. When a black family's casual ancestry test uncovers that their patriarch is a fugitive wanted for a decades-old murder, the revelation sends shockwaves through their lives. His eldest daughter, a rising attorney, is forced to choose between protecting the man who raised her and upholding the law she swore to serve. Secrets emerge, alliances shift, and the truth threatens to tear them apart forever. Quick heads up before we jump in. If you're into real stories, strange disappearances, and the kind of truths people try to bury, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. All right, let's get into it. The Johnson household on a Sunday evening smelled like collard greens, cornbread, and something sweet baking slow in the oven. Camille Johnson stepped into the kitchen, balancing a bottle of wine in one hand and her work laptop in the other. Her mother, Denise, looked up from the stove with that familiar mix of love and judgment. "Girl, why you always got that computer with you?" Denise asked, shaking her head. "Habit," Camille said with a smile, kissing her mother on the cheek. "Court papers don't draft themselves." From the dining room, laughter floated in. Her younger brother Marcus was already there, arguing sports with their cousin Tasha. At the head of the table sat Harold Johnson, her father. 61 years old, skin like polished mahogany, broad shoulders that had carried more than car parts during his 30 years at the GM plant. "Cam, get in here," Marcus yelled. "You late? Again." "I'm on time," she called back, slipping her heels off by the door. "Y'all just early." They gathered around the table, plates heavy with food, the kind of meal that made Camille forget the gray world outside their East Detroit neighborhood. Halfway through dinner, Marcus reached into a plastic bag and pulled out 3 small boxes. "Okay, family," he said dramatically. "Time for the big reveal." "What is that?" Denise asked, squinting. "DNA kits," Marcus grinned. "Ancestry stuff. Been trending all over social media. Thought we could learn where we from." Camille raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" "Why not? White folks been doing it for years," Marcus said. "We might be park royalty for all we know." Harold chuckled low, the sound deep like gravel. "Boy, you got too much time on your hands." "Come on, Pops," Marcus urged. "It'll be fun. Spit in a tube. Find out we kings and queens." Denise gave a side-eye, but shrugged. "As long as it don't cost me nothing." "It's on me," Marcus said, handing out kits. Camille hesitated. She wasn't big on gimmicks, but the idea of mapping roots tugged at something inside her. Her law firm ate up most of her life. Heritage wasn't something she thought about often. Still, she uncapped the tube. "All right," Marcus said, demonstrating. "Spit, seal, and ship. Couple weeks, we know the truth." "What truth?" Harold muttered with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Camille noticed that look barely there, gone in a blink. That night, after the kitchen was clean and laughter faded, Harold sat alone in the den, TV light flickering across his face. The unopened DNA kit rested on the coffee table like a dare. He picked it up slowly, turning it in his hands. For a long moment, he stared at it, the smile gone now, his jaw tight. Then he whispered to no one, "Damn." 2 weeks later, the envelope sat on the Johnsons' porch like any other piece of mail. Camille spotted it first when she stopped by after court. The familiar green and white logo caught her eye, and for a second, curiosity sparked. She carried it inside, past the old linoleum that still squeaked beneath her heels. "Mom, Marcus," she called, waving the package. "Y'all ready to find out if we royalty?" Denise emerged from the laundry room, wiping her hands on a towel. "Lord, they finally came?" "Yup, one for me, one for Marcus, and..." Camille trailed off, scanning the envelope. Her brow furrowed. Daddy didn't send his in? He said he wasn't fooling with that mess, Denise replied, rolling her eyes. You know your father. Camille nodded, but something tugged at her. She remembered that flicker in Harold's face the night of dinner. She brushed it off and tore open the envelope, pulling out her report. Marcus barreled in seconds later, already grinning. All right, what's the verdict? He asked, grabbing his own results like a kid on Christmas. Camille skimmed hers West African, a touch of Caribbean, some European sprinkled in. No big shock. Marcus hollered something about being 10% Irish maybe, and started doing a jig that made Denise laugh so hard she nearly dropped the towel. Camille chuckled, shaking her head until her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Unknown caller. She ignored it. Camille? Denise asked. Work, she muttered, silencing it. But it buzzed again. Same number. And then again. Camille frowned and answered. Hello? A crisp male voice spoke on the other end, calm and official. Miss Camille Johnson? Yes? This is Special Agent Lucas with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding a recent DNA submission linked to your household. Camille froze. Her eyes flicked to her mother and Marcus, both still laughing in the kitchen. I'm sorry. What is this about? Not over the phone, the agent said. Are you available for a meeting? It's urgent. Her pulse kicked up. Is someone in trouble? There was a pause long enough to twist her stomach into knots. We just need to confirm a few things, Agent Lucas said. We'll send 2 agents to your address within the hour. The line clicked dead. Camille stood there, hand trembling, phone pressed to her ear, even after the call ended. Denise noticed first. Baby, what is it?
Miss Johnson?
Hey, that's the thing.
Camille forced a smile that didn't feel like hers. Nothing. Work thing. But her heart was hammering as she slid her phone into her pocket. A sudden heaviness filled the house, pressing against the laughter like an unwelcome shadow. An hour later, 2 men in dark suits pulled up outside in an unmarked sedan. Camille watched through the blinds as they stepped onto the porch, one tall, pale, the other shorter, with warm brown skin but the same stone-faced demeanor. She met them at the door before they could knock, slipping out and pulling it closed behind her. Ms. Johnson? The taller one asked, flashing a badge. Yes. I'm Agent Lucas. This is Agent Price. We're here regarding a DNA match connected to your father, Harold Johnson. Camille's throat went dry. What kind of match? Lucas's eyes didn't waver. A double homicide. Detroit, 1986. For a second, all sound fell away. The distant hum of cars, Marcus's voice through the window, even the wind. Camille just stared at them, her father's laughter from the den echoing in her ears like something far away. Inside the house, Harold sat in his recliner, flipping through an old photo album, his thick fingers lingering on a faded Polaroid. His face was unreadable as the low murmur of the TV filled the room. On the page, 2 men smiled back at him, both young, both alive. The evening sky draped the street in muted gold, but Camille felt none of its warmth. The 2 agents stood like stone pillars on the porch, their presence sucking all ease from the air. She swallowed hard. You must have the wrong person. Agent Lucas didn't blink. We're sure we don't. His voice had a finality to it, the kind that closed doors and shut down hope. Agent Price flipped open a folder. Inside was a grainy black and white crime scene photobud pooled on a cracked linoleum floor, a knife glinting in harsh light. Camille flinched. Lucas tilted the folder just enough for her to see two names scrawled on the report: Charles L. Peterson and Anthony Graves. Your father's DNA is a direct match to evidence collected from this scene, Lucas said. Detroit. June 4th, 1986. Do you know where he was that summer? Camille opened her mouth, then closed it. The weight of 39 years pressed down. She'd been 3 years old in 86. Her memories of that time were like fog-soft laughter, the smell of motor oil on her daddy's hands, his deep voice singing along to Marvin Gaye on the radio. I don't know, she admitted, voice tight. What exactly are you accusing him of? Double homicide, Price answered flatly. Her chest locked up. Words wouldn't come. Lucas leaned in, his tone still measured but firm. We'd like to speak to your father. Is he inside? Camille's mind split in two. One part screamed, tell them he's not here. Protect him. The other, the attorney in her, shouted, you know obstruction is a felony. She gripped the doorknob so tight her knuckles whitened. He's resting. He's not well, she lied, heart thudding against her ribs. Lucas didn't flinch. This isn't optional, Miss Johnson. If we have to come back with a warrant, we will. Behind the door, a creak. Footsteps on hardwood. Camille turned just in time to see Harold in the hallway, his broad frame backlit by the warm glow of the living room lamp. He was dressed in his usual house clothes faded Tigers t-shirt, old sweatpants, but his eyes told another story. They locked with Camille's for half a second, just enough for her to see the storm brewing there. A question, an apology, and something else. Readiness. Baby, who's that? Harold asked, voice steady, almost casual. Camille froze, her body screaming don't answer, but Lucas beat her to it. Mr. Johnson? FBI. We need to ask you a few questions. A silence dropped heavy as wet cement. Then Harold stepped forward, slow and deliberate, like a man walking into a fire he'd known was coming for years. You don't need to ask me nothing, he said. I know why you here. Camille's stomach turned to ice. Daddy. Go on back inside, Camille, Harold murmured without looking at her. Close the door. No, she whispered, panic crawling up her throat. No, I'm not. Now. His voice cracked like a whip. It wasn't anger, though. It was final. Lucas glanced at Price, then back at Harold. Sir, we need you to come with us. Harold lifted his hands slowly, like old roots pulling free from earth. No fight, no hesitation. Just a weary surrender. I ain't running. Camille couldn't breathe as they cuffed him. The steel clink echoed louder than the agent's words, louder than her own heartbeat. As they led him down the steps, Harold turned his head just enough to meet her eyes. For the first time, she saw fear in them. Not of prison, not of death, of something deeper. Tell your mama I'm sorry, he said softly, before ducking into the car. The sedan pulled away, taillights bleeding red into the dusk. Camille stood rooted on the porch, fists clenched, nails biting her palms, the night closing in around her. Inside the house, Marcus's voice broke through the silence, calling from the kitchen. Camille? What's going on? Back in the living room, the photo album Harold had been looking at earlier lay open on the recliner. On the page, two men smiled at the camera, arms slung over his shoulders. Young Harold grinned wide, life still ahead of him. Beneath the photo, in fading ink, were two names, Charles and Tony, the same names from the case file. Camille sat on the edge of her childhood bed, the one with the headboard carved like vines. Her phone lay face down on the comforter, buzzing every few minutes. Marcus had called 6 times already, Denise twice. She hadn't answered either. The house was too quiet now. No hum of her father's laugh, no low mumble of the TV. Just the tick of the old clock on the wall, measuring out seconds that felt like punches. She finally picked up her phone and called the Wayne County Detention Center. A female voice, cold and rehearsed, told her Harold Johnson had been booked at 8:32 p.m., charged with 2 counts of homicide in the first degree. No bond. Camille hung up, her hand trembling so hard the phone slipped and hit the carpet with a dull thud. 2 murders. Not robbery, not self-defense. Murder. Her daddy, the man who taught her how to ride a bike, who drove her to Howard her freshman year, who never raised his voice except when the Lions blew a lead, was sitting in a cell for killing 2 men almost 40 years ago. She grabbed her laptop, fingers moving before her brain caught up. She logged into the firm's legal database and started typing. People v. Harold Johnson. Nothing. No record of charges. Indictments. Bench warrants. She expanded the search. 1,986. Detroit. Victims: Charles L. Peterson and Anthony Graves. A beat later, the case popped up: State of Michigan v. Unknown subject. Open and cold since '86. Camille clicked the file. A black and white photo filled the screen, same as the one Agent Lucas had shown her. 2 bodies on a kitchen floor, faces blurred but unmistakably human in their stillness. The report said they were found in a rental house on the east side. No forced entry. Multiple stab wounds. Blood everywhere. Then she saw the kicker. Primary suspect fled scene. Believed to be male, black, approximately 25 to 30 years old. Case stalled due to lack of forensic technology at the time. Her throat tightened. In 1986, Harold would have been 27. Camille closed the laptop with a snap and pressed her palms against her eyes. She could hear Marcus downstairs now, his voice bouncing off the walls like a storm. "What the hell's going on, Cam? Mama said the FBI took Daddy. Why ain't you picking up?" She didn't move. Couldn't. Marcus thundered up the stairs 2 at a time and burst into her room, his big frame filling the doorway. His hoodie was half-zipped, and his eyes were wild. "What happened?" he demanded. Camille stared at him, her mouth opening, closing, opening again, like a fish out of water. Finally, she managed, They said Daddy's DNA matched, evidence from a double murder. In '86. Marcus blinked, like he was trying to process English in another language. Then he laughed loud, sharp, almost manic. "Man, get the hell out of here. Daddy? Our daddy? He don't even kill spiders." "I'm serious, Marcus." Her voice cracked, and that was worse than tears, because Camille never cracked. Marcus's grin faded. "No," he said, shaking his head. "No, they got this wrong. They messed up the test or something." Camille didn't answer. The silence stretched so long, Marcus punched the doorframe hard enough to make the wood groan. Downstairs, the front door slammed open. Denise's voice rose up the stairwell, thick with panic. "Camille, what's going on with your father?" Neither of them moved. Camille stared past Marcus at the window, the night pressing in against the glass like something alive. Her father had said, "Tell your mama I'm sorry." Not "I didn't do it." Not once. Her stomach twisted. She grabbed her blazer from the chair. "Where are you going?" Marcus demanded. "To find out the truth," Camille said, her tone sharper than she felt. She brushed past him, her heels clicking like gunshots on the hardwood, and didn't look back. An hour later, Camille's Lexus slid into a dark parking lot near Jefferson Avenue, the kind of place where streetlights flickered and rats darted between dumpsters. She checked the address twice before killing the engine. The building was old brick, windows boarded, a faded sign reading Motown Barbers hanging by a rusted chain. Her father had always told her this spot was where the old heads talk. Inside, the air smelled of talc, pomade, and secrets. 3 chairs lined the wall, all empty except for a man sitting in the middle one, cape draped over his lap like a throne robe. He looked up as she walked in. gray creeping through his beard, gold tooth flashing when he smirked. "You must be Harold's girl," he said, voice smooth and dangerous. Camille's pulse spiked. "Who are you?" The man chuckled low, shaking his head. "Name's Lenny. And if the feds came knocking, I guess it's time you learned who your daddy really is." The hum of an old refrigerator filled the silence as Lenny leaned back in the barber chair, arms draped across the worn leather like a man who owned more than the room. His eyes locked on Camille's, sharp and patient. "You got your daddy's stare," he said finally, his voice low and rough like gravel under tires. "Means you ain't gonna leave till you hear the truth. So sit down." Camille stayed standing. Every instinct told her to walk out, but something heavier, something older, kept her rooted to the cracked linoleum floor. "Why did the FBI come for him?" she asked. They said 2 men were murdered. Charles Peterson. Anthony Graves. Lenny smirked, revealing that gold tooth again. "Yeah," he said softly. "Charlie and Tony. They were family once. Till the streets got hungry." Camille's pulse jumped. "Family? My father didn't run with gangs." Lenny laughed then, a hollow, bitter sound that scraped the air. "That what he told you? Figures. Harold always tried to play the saint after he got out. But back in '86, he shook his head slowly. Girl, your daddy was the muscle. Kept folks in line when talk didn't work. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't brag, but when it came time to handle business, Harold did what had to be done." Camille's throat felt tight. "You're lying." "Nah," Lenny said. "Truth just sound like a lie when it don't fit the picture you painted." He reached into the drawer of the barber station and pulled out a yellowed envelope. Inside were photographs, real photographs, curled at the edges, smelling faintly of mildew and old smoke. He spread them across the counter like tarot cards. Camille stepped closer despite herself. Her breath hitched. In one picture, her father stood in front of a candy-red Buick Regal, wearing a leather bomber and a smile that didn't belong to the man who taught her to drive. 2 other men flanked him, arms draped across his shoulders, one light-skinned with a thick mustache, the other darker with a wide, toothy grin. Scrawled on the back in fading ink, 86 me, Charlie, Tony, and HJ. Camille's stomach dropped. "They was tight," Lenny said, tapping the photo. "Blood couldn't make 'em closer. But greed? Greed'll split the marrow." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes narrowing like he was staring through time. "See, back then, dope money ran through this city like a river. Everybody wanted a piece. Charlie and Tony? They wanted more than a piece. They wanted it all. Told Harold he had to choose ride with them or get left in the dirt." Camille swallowed hard. And Harold ain't like bullies," Lenny said. "But he wasn't stupid neither. Said he'd think on it." Next thing, Charlie and Tony turn up dead in some kitchen on the east side. Word was Harold snapped. Said they came at him first. Some folks called it self-defense. Others called it a power move. All I know. He sat back, exhaling slow. Is Harold walked away breathing, and they didn't? Camille's knees felt weak. She gripped the edge of the counter, staring at those faces frozen in 1986. "My father killed 2 men. Allegedly," Lenny said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Cops never proved a damn thing. No cameras back then. No DNA till now." Camille's head spun. The case file flashed in her mind, the sterile words multiple stab wounds pounding like a drum. "Why didn't he run?" she whispered. "If he knew." "Oh, he ran," Lenny said, nodding slowly, "but not far. Changed his name, laid low, started that little happy family life. Thought time would bury the bones." He shrugged. "Guess time dug him back up." A door creaked behind her. Camille turned sharply. A boy couldn't have been more than 16 stood in the back doorway, hoodie up, eyes sharp like a knife. "Unc," the boy said, voice low. "Phone." Lenny waved him off. "Later." But the boy stepped closer, whispering in his ear. Camille caught 2 words before the rest got swallowed. "Feds watching." Lenny's jaw tightened for the first time. He stood, pulling his cape off like shedding a second skin. "Conversation's over, princess," he said. "Go home. Tell your mama to pray." Camille stared at him, the taste of iron in her mouth. "You know where my father is now?" Lenny paused, his hand on the doorframe. "Yeah," he said softly. "Locked in a cage, where they've been saving a spot for him since the day we was born." Then he was gone, the boy on his heels, leaving the photos on the counter like a curse. Camille gathered them with shaking hands, slid them into her purse, and walked out into the night. The wind off the river felt colder than it had any right to be. As she slid into her car, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Marcus. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you're next." The pictures in her bag suddenly felt like bricks. The Wayne County Detention Center loomed like a slab of concrete in the gray morning mist, its steel doors swallowing hope whole. Camille gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She'd spent years in courtrooms, arguing motions and standing toe-to-toe with men accused of things she couldn't imagine doing herself. But this was her father behind those walls. She sat there for a full minute before forcing herself out of the car, heels clicking on wet pavement. Inside, the sterile chill hit her like a slap-bleached floors. Buzzing fluorescent lights, the metallic tang of fear baked into the walls. At the visitor desk, a correctional officer scanned her ID and slid a clipboard toward her. "Fill it out," he said, not bothering to look up. Camille scribbled her name, checked the box for immediate family, and waited. Every nerve in her body thrummed like a live wire. When they finally called her name, she walked down a corridor that smelled faintly of sweat and bleach. The room was divided by thick glass panels, each with a metal stool and a black phone receiver. She sat down at the middle booth, her heart hammering like a war drum. Then he appeared. Harold Johnson, her father, shuffled in, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his shoulders. His hands were cuffed at the waist, his walk slow, deliberate. The man who used to tower over her now looked smaller somehow, like the walls had already started carving him down. He sat across from her, his eyes finding hers instantly. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he picked up the receiver. She did the same, her hand trembling against the cool plastic. "Camille," he said, his voice low but steady, like always. "Daddy," she whispered, and the word cracked on her tongue. They just stared for a beat too long before she spoke again. They said your DNA matched a crime scene. 2 men, Charlie and Tony." His jaw tightened. His eyes didn't waver. "Where'd you hear those names?" "From a man named Lenny. He said you were." She stopped herself, breath shaking. "Were you in a gang?" Harold let out a slow sigh, like air escaping an old tire. "It wasn't no gang. It was survival. Back then, Detroit was bleeding, baby. Factory jobs drying up, crack eating up neighborhoods. You either sank or you swam with the ones who kept you afloat." Camille blinked hard, her pulse thudding in her ears. "Did you kill them?" Silence fell between them like a blade. His eyes softened, but they didn't give her what she wanted. "Camille, everything I did so you and Marcus could have better. So you didn't end up like the rest." "That's not an answer," she said, her voice sharp, cracking at the edges. Harold leaned in closer to the glass. His face was calm, but his voice dropped low, heavy with something ancient and raw. "Those men? They were my brothers once. We came up together. But power? Power turned brothers into wolves." Camille gripped the receiver so hard her fingers hurt. "Daddy, yes or no? Did you kill them?" His eyes locked on hers, deep and unreadable, and for the first time in her life, Camille realized she didn't fully know the man sitting across from her. "I need you to trust me," he said quietly, "because the truth ain't as simple as yes or no." Her throat burned. "They found your blood at the scene. They have DNA. They got a lot of things," Harold said, leaning back. "Don't mean they got the whole story." Before she could answer, a guard stepped up behind him, tapping the glass. "Time's up." "Wait!" Camille pressed her palm to the divider as Harold rose slowly. "Daddy, what story? What happened?" He held her gaze one last time, his voice barely above a whisper as they led him away. "Find the man wearing scars on his left hand," he said. "Find him, and you'll know." The door clanged shut behind him, leaving Camille staring at her own reflection in the glass. Her heart thundered as his words replayed in her head. The man with scars on his left hand. Outside, rain slicked the pavement as she slid back into her car. Her phone buzzed again, a voicemail this time. She played it on speaker as she pulled onto Jefferson. A distorted voice filled the car. "Camille Johnson, this is your final warning. Stop digging, or we'll finish what Harold started." The line clicked dead. Camille gripped the wheel tighter, her breath ragged. Her father was hiding something big enough to kill for. And now, whoever these people were, they thought she was part of the game. She glanced at the envelope on the passenger seat, the old photographs from Lenny's barbershop. Her eyes caught on one detail she hadn't noticed before. Tony, one of the dead men, had his arms slung around another guy in the background. A man with his hand resting on a car hood. And even in the faded photo, Camille could see the scars running across his left knuckles like claw marks. Camille sat in her car, outside a dingy Detroit coffee shop, the engine idling low, rain tapping a restless rhythm against the windshield. The photo lay on the passenger seat, its edges curling like a secret trying to stay hidden. Her eyes kept drifting back to that hand, the scarred knuckles resting casually on the hood of a car. She'd spent half the night scanning the picture with her phone, blowing it up, sharpening the image until her eyes ached. She couldn't make out his face completely, just the jawline, the shadow of a mustache, and those scars that looked like someone had tried to carve him open and failed. The name under the picture read Big Ray. Camille opened her laptop and searched every legal and criminal database she had access to. Dozens of hits on Raymond Butler, a name tied to Detroit since the 80s. Drug cases, assaults, a weapons charge that vanished without explanation. But the kicker? No conviction ever stuck. She slammed the laptop shut and checked her rearview mirror out of habit. No tail, not yet. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel and replayed her father's words. "Find the man wearing scars on his left hand. Find him, and you'll know." Inside the coffee shop, the air was thick with the smell of burnt beans and something sweeter lies, maybe. Camille ordered a black coffee and slid into a corner booth where she could see the door. Her contact was late. She didn't normally deal with street informants. She was an attorney, not a cop. But she'd called a favor from an old client, a small-time hustler she once got off a probation violation, and he'd agreed to meet. 5 minutes later, a man in a navy hoodie slid into the seat across from her, eyes darting like they were on a timer. "You, Camille?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." He smirked. "Chill. Lenny said you looking for Big Ray." Camille nodded slowly. "You know where I can find him?" The man laughed low. "Girl, Ray ain't the type you find. He the type that find you if he want." She leaned in, voice firm. "Tell him Camille Johnson wants a conversation. About Harold." That made him pause. His smirk faded like smoke. "Harold Johnson? From back in the day?" "Yeah," she said, her pulse spiking. "That Harold." The man whistled low. "You bold. You know what happened to folks who crossed Ray?" "I'm not crossing him," Camille said, keeping her voice steady. "I just need answers." The man shook his head like he was trying to shake off the idea entirely. Then he slid out of the booth without another word, leaving behind a folded napkin. Camille opened it. 3 words scrawled in black ink. Mack and 7 midnight. By the time she parked near Mack Avenue, the city had sunk into darkness, the rain turning streets into slick ribbons that glimmered under neon lights. Midnight in this part of Detroit wasn't a place for someone like her, a polished lawyer in heels and a tailored coat, but Camille didn't care. She waited in her car, engine off, heartbeat loud in her ears. Every passing shadow looked like it had teeth. Then, out of the black, a Cadillac rolled slow, its headlights slicing through the rain. It stopped a few feet ahead of her. The back window slid down, just enough for a face to appear. The man looked older than the photo suggested, but time hadn't dulled the menace in his eyes. His left hand rested on the door, and even from here, Camille saw the scar's jagged, pale lines etched across his knuckles like war trophies. Camille Johnson, a deep voice rumbled from the car. Harold's little girl. You got his fire. I respect that. Camille swallowed hard, forcing steel into her spine. Big Ray? He smiled a slow, dangerous curve. Get in. Every instinct screamed don't, but she opened the door and slid into the back seat, the smell of leather and gun oil wrapping around her like a warning. Ray studied her for a long, heavy beat. Then he leaned forward, his voice dropping low. You want to know the truth about 86? Yes, Camille said, her voice firm even though her hands trembled in her lap. Then buckle up, baby girl, Ray said, his grin widening. 'Cause your daddy ain't the hero you think he is, and neither am I. The Cadillac pulled away from the curb, its taillights melting into the wet dark. As they drove, Camille's phone buzzed inside her coat pocket. She glanced down and froze. Another text from the same unknown number. You shouldn't have done that. The Cadillac glided through the wet streets like a shark through dark water, its engine a low growl beneath the rain. Camille sat stiff in the back seat, every nerve in her body screaming for her to jump out, run, do something. But her father's words chained her to the seat. Find the man with scars. Find him, and you'll know. Big Ray lit a cigarette, the flare of the lighter briefly painting his face in orange. The smoke curled lazy circles as he exhaled, eyes on her like a man measuring weight before making a cut. You really Harold's blood, he said finally. Same stubborn eyes, same need to dig in graves that should stay shut. Camille held his stare. You know why I'm here. They've got him in lockup for Charlie and Tony. The FBI says his DNA at the scene. Ray chuckled, a sound low and bitter, like gravel sliding. Course it was. Hell, we all bled that night. Her stomach nodded. So he was there. Ray tilted his head. You ever ask yourself why it took him damn near 40 years to catch your daddy? Camille didn't answer. The question slashed through her like a blade, because she had asked herself that lying awake all night, replaying every second of their visit in the glass booth. Ray leaned closer, the glow of his cigarette cutting through the dark. Let me tell you something, counselor. That night wasn't no murder in cold blood. It was a setup, but not the way you think. Camille's breath caught. A setup? Ray smirked, tapping ash into the tray. Charlie and Tony? They wasn't just greedy. They was snakes. Been running side deals behind Harold's back, cutting him out while smiling in his face. Word on the street was they planned to take him out, make it look like a robbery gone bad. Only problem? Harold figured it out first. Her pulse quickened. So he killed them before they killed him. Ray shook his head slowly, like a man disappointed in a student. No, sweetheart, he didn't kill him. I did. The words hung in the air, thick as smoke. Camille blinked, her breath snagging in her chest. You. Damn right, Ray said, voice calm as Sunday. I walked in that kitchen, saw Charlie pull in steel on Harold. Didn't think twice. Blood hit the walls before Harold could even blink. Camille stared, her brain scrambling to process. Then why? Why is my father in jail? Ray smiled, wide and cruel, 'cause Harold never snitched. Never told a soul who pulled that trigger. He carried that weight for me, all these years. Built a whole new life on top of a secret soaked in blood. Camille felt her throat tighten, her fingers gripping her knees so hard they ached. So what do you want from me? I thanked you? Ray laughed loud and sharp, bouncing off the leather interior. Nah, I want you to understand something. That man you love, he ain't innocent. He might not have spilled the first drop, but he cleaned up the rest. Buried bodies, burned evidence, swore me out of the story. Thought he could outrun the devil, but the devil don't forget. The car slowed, turning down a deserted street lined with dead factories, their windows gaping like broken teeth. Rain streaked the glass, muting the orange glow of a single streetlight up ahead. Ray killed the engine and turned to her fully now, his eyes sharp as razors. You got two choices, Camille, he said. One, you walk away. Let Harold take the fall like he planned. Two, you keep digging, and I promise, the dirt you find gonna bury you too. Camille swallowed hard, her breath fogging the glass. Is that a threat? Ray leaned in close enough for her to smell the smoke on his breath. That's a guarantee. He unlocked the door and gave her a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Now get out my car before I start thinking you favor your daddy a little too much. Camille stepped out into the rain, her heels splashing in shallow puddles. The Cadillac's taillights flared red, then vanished into the dark, leaving her standing alone under the buzzing streetlight. She pulled her phone from her coat, thumbs shaking as she typed a name into her notes. Raymond Butler, confessed. But when she looked up again, her blood ran cold. Across the street, under the skeletal frame of an old factory, a figure stood watching her. Hood up, face shadowed, still, silent. And in the glow of the streetlight, she saw the glint of something metal in his hand. The message from earlier slammed back into her mind like a bullet. You shouldn't have done that. Camille's breath hitched as the figure stepped forward, slow, deliberate, the hood casting his face in shadow. The metallic glint in his hand caught the streetlight. Again, a knife? A gun? She couldn't tell. Instinct clawed at her to run, but her legs felt welded to the cracked pavement. The figure stopped just shy of the light, rain streaking his jacket in silver lines. Then, in one motion, he pulled the hood back. Camille's stomach plummeted. Marcus? She whispered. Her brother stood there, chest heaving, his eyes dark and stormy. The metal in his hand wasn't a weapon. It was her spare car key, the one she thought she'd lost weeks ago. What the hell are you doing here? She demanded, voice trembling between anger and fear. Marcus didn't answer right away. He just stared at her, jaw tight, water dripping from his curls. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and sharp, like broken glass. You think you're the only one who can play detective? Camille blinked, her pulse still hammering. How did you even find me? He held up his phone, screen glowing with the family location app she'd forgotten about. You share your damn location, Camille. Ain't rocket science. Camille closed her eyes for a beat, trying to slow her breath. You shouldn't be here. And you should, he snapped. What the hell you doing meeting with killers in the middle of the night? Her stomach clenched. You saw him? Marcus's laugh was bitter, short. Yeah, I saw him. Raymond Butler. Everybody knows that name. At least everybody who grew up where Daddy came from. You know what they call him? The Reaper. And you just slid into his car like he was Uber. Camille stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You don't get it, Marcus. He confessed, said he's the one who killed Charlie and Tony, not Daddy. Marcus stared at her, rain dripping from his lashes, and then he shook his head slowly, almost like he pitied her. You really believe that? You think Ray just out here clearing Harold out of the goodness of his heart? Camille froze. What are you saying? Marcus stepped closer now, his face tight with something more than anger, something like shame. I've been talking to Daddy long before the FBI came knocking. Her stomach turned. What? Yeah, Marcus said, his voice sharp now. He told me stuff. Stuff he didn't tell you. You know why? 'Cause you his golden girl, the lawyer, the one who made it out clean. He didn't want blood on your hands. But me? I've been living in the shadow of his mess my whole damn life. And you know what I found out? Camille's throat tightened. Marcus, what did he tell you? Marcus leaned in, his eyes like fire in the dark. That Ray ain't lying. He did pull the trigger that night. But Daddy was the one who called him. Set it up. Told him where Charlie and Tony would be. Told him when to strike. Camille staggered back like he'd hit her. The rain roared in her ears, but she heard every word. No, she whispered. That's not. That's the truth. Marcus cut in, his voice raw. Daddy wasn't some victim. He wasn't no hero. He started that war, Camille. And now you out here thinking you can fix it? You can't. The only thing you gon' do is get yourself killed. Camille's head spun, her heart pounding against her ribs. She wanted to scream, to deny it, but Marcus's eyes told her he believed every word. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? She whispered. Because I thought maybe if you stayed out of it, it would blow over, Marcus said, his voice breaking at the edges. But you just had to keep digging. He stepped closer, his face inches from hers now, rain dripping between them like glass beads. Listen to me, Cam. Walk away. Let Daddy take this. Let it die. Before she could answer, headlights flared at the far end of the street. Both of them turned. A black SUV crawled toward them, slow and menacing, tires slicing through rainwater. Camille's pulse spiked. Marcus. Get in the car, Marcus hissed, shoving her toward her Lexus. The SUV stopped halfway down the block. The driver's window rolled down, and for a split second, Camille saw the glint of a weapon. A voice boomed through the rain. Y'all should have listened. Gunfire shattered the night. Camille dove behind her car as bullets ripped through glass, sparks flying off metal. Marcus yanked the door open and shoved her inside, sliding in after her as another round pinged off the trunk. Go, he yelled. Her hands shook as she jammed the key in the ignition, tires screeching as the Lexus fishtailed into the wet street. Behind them, the SUV gave chase, its headlights burning like twin eyes in the dark. Camille gripped the wheel, her breath ragged, heart slamming against her ribs. Marcus fumbled for something under the seat, cursing under his breath. Please tell me that's not a gun, she said, voice cracking. Marcus looked at her, jaw clenched. It's Detroit, Camille. What do you think? They tore through the empty streets, a sound of sirens far away and useless. And in the back of her mind, Camille knew two things for sure. Ray had lied, but so had Harold. And now the truth was out there somewhere dripping blood in the rain. The Lexus screeched around a corner, tires screaming against slick pavement as Camille gripped the wheel like her life depended on it, because it did. The SUV's headlights loomed in the rearview, cutting through sheets of rain like twin blades. Marcus crouched low in the passenger seat, fumbling with the gun he'd pulled from under the seat. The barrel gleamed cold, menacing in the dashboard's glow. Marcus, put that down. Camille snapped, heart pounding like war drums. You want us dead? He barked back. 'Cause that's what's about to happen if we don't do something. The SUV surged forward, slamming into their bumper. Camille's body jerked forward against the seatbelt. She bit back a scream, swerving hard to avoid a row of parked cars. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder, a cruel reminder of the life she'd had just days ago. One filled with court filings and latte orders instead of gunfire and death threats. I can't outrun them forever. She shouted. And stop running, Marcus growled. He rolled the window halfway down, rain lashing his face as he leaned out with the gun. I got this, Marcus, but it was too late. He fired. The cracks split the night, echoing off the empty buildings. The SUV swerved, one tire exploding in a burst of sparks. It fishtailed wildly before slamming into a rusted lamppost with a bone-jarring crunch. Camille didn't stop to look. She gunned the Lexus down the next street, adrenaline surging hot in her veins. Only when they were 10 blocks away did she pull into an abandoned gas station, chest heaving as she killed the engine. For a long moment, the only sound was their breathing, ragged, uneven, charged with terror. Rain pounded on the roof like fists. Marcus finally spoke, his voice hoarse. We need a plan. Camille stared out the windshield, heart still racing. We can't go home. They'll find us. And if Ray's people are behind this? She trailed off, her stomach knotting. Marcus turned to her, eyes blazing. You still think Ray's the key? Camille, he played you. Told you just enough truth to keep you on the hook. You don't see that? Camille swallowed hard, her hands trembling on the wheel. Maybe. But I also know Daddy's lying. If he really set up Charlie and Tony, why protect Ray now? Why carry that for decades? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it, jaw tight. He didn't have an answer, and neither did she. Camille reached for her phone with a shaky hand. I'm calling Agent Lucas. Marcus's head snapped around. What? No, absolutely not. He's the only leverage we've got, she shot back. If the FBI thinks Ray pulled the trigger, maybe we can flip this before somebody else ends up dead. Marcus slammed his palm against the dashboard. You think the Fed's gonna save us? They don't care about us, Cam. They just want bodies to bury and headlines to brag about. Maybe, she said, her voice steel now. But if I don't make a move, Ray's people will put us in the ground before sunrise. She dialed Lucas's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice clipped. Camille? I have information, she said, forcing calm into her tone. But I want a deal full immunity for me and Marcus. There was a pause, heavy and sharp. What kind of information? The real shooter from 1986, Raymond Butler. I can give him to you. Lucas exhaled slowly. That's a bold claim, Miss Johnson. Meet me in 1 hour, Camille said. And Lucas? If I even think you're bringing backup, this conversation never happened. She hung up before he could answer. Marcus stared at her like she'd grown horns. You just signed our death warrants. Camille shoved the car in gear. No, she said, her voice cold now. I just bought us a lifeline. Now let's go fish a devil. 1 hour later, the diner smelled like burnt coffee and old secrets, the kind of place where daylight felt like an intruder. Camille slid into a corner booth, her back to the wall, eyes on the door. Marcus sat beside her, restless, his hoodie up like armor. 5 minutes later, Lucas walked in alone, his suit damp from the rain. He spotted them, slid into the booth across from Camille, and folded his hands on the table. His eyes were sharp, assessing. You have my attention, he said. Camille leaned forward, her voice low. Raymond Butler confessed to me. He said he killed Charlie and Tony, not my father. Lucas didn't flinch. Got proof? Not yet, she admitted, but I can get it. He wants to meet again. If I bring him in, I want guarantees my father gets leniency. Marcus and I walk clean. Lucas studied her for a long moment, then said, If you deliver Butler in evidence that sticks, I'll do what I can. Not good enough, Camille snapped. Put it in writing. Before Lucas could respond, the bell over the diner door jingled again. Camille glanced up, and her blood ran cold. Lenny, standing in the doorway, rain dripping off his leather jacket, eyes locked on hers like crosshairs. And he wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, big and hard-faced, their jackets bulging where guns hid like secrets. Lucas's hand twitched toward his side, but Lenny was faster. He smiled a slow, wolfish grin and slid a finger across his throat. The diner door swung shut behind him, sealing Camille into the kind of silence that screams before bullets fly. The diner felt like a coffin with neon lights, every breath thick with the smell of grease and danger. Lenny stood just inside the doorway, water dripping from his leather jacket, his grin sharp enough to cut glass. The 2 men flanking him scanned the room like predators checking for exits. Camille's pulse spiked so hard it rattled her bones. Marcus shifted beside her, his jaw tight, his hoodie shadowing eyes that flickered between fight and flight. Across the booth, Agent Lucas slid a hand under the table, slow and controlled, but Lenny clocked it. Lenny said, wagging a finger like a disappointed teacher. Don't go reaching, man. This ain't that kind of party. Lucas froze, but his stare was steel. What do you want, Lenny? Lenny smirked, strolling closer. What I always want. To make sure loose ends stay tied. His eyes cut to Camille, cold and amused. And baby girl here? She out here pulling knots loose like it's a damn hobby. Camille's nails bit into her palms under the table, but she forced her voice steady. You sent the SUV. Lenny chuckled. You smart. Shame it ain't enough to save you. One of his men locked the diner door and flipped the open sign to closed. The waitress peeked out from the kitchen, saw the guns bulging under jackets, and vanished like smoke. Lucas's tone stayed calm, measured. You know this is a federal crime, right? Walk away now, and maybe I forget you pulled this stunt. Lenny leaned on their booth, the smell of cheap cologne and cigarettes wrapping around them like barbed wire. See, that's your problem. You think the law matters where we come from. But in my world, the law's just noise. He turned his grin back on Camille, his gold tooth flashing like a warning. And your daddy knew that better than anyone. Hell, he wrote half the rules. Camille's stomach nodded. What the hell are you talking about? Lenny laughed, a low, ugly sound. Ray didn't tell you, did he? Figures. That old wolf loves his stories. Her breath hitched. Tell me what? That night in '86, Lenny said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Ray didn't kill Charlie and Tony on no impulse. He killed them because Harold paid him to. The words hit like gunfire in her chest. You're lying. Am I? Lenny's eyes gleamed. Ask your daddy why his blood was on that floor. Not from no scuffle. From cutting the deal and making sure the job got finished. Ray pulled the trigger. Yeah, but Harold? Harold made the call. And then he cleaned house like a pro. That's why your pretty little family got to play happy for 40 years. Camille's throat locked. Marcus muttered a curse under his breath, his fists balling so tight his knuckles whitened. Lucas broke the silence, his voice sharp. Why are you telling her this? Lenny grinned wider. 'Cause Ray thinks he's still the big dog, but times changed. Harold going down means nothing to me. But the girl? He pointed a thick finger at Camille. She keeps poking, and sooner or later, somebody's got to put her down before she drags us all into hell. Before Lucas could move, Lenny drew his gun. The click cracked like thunder in the silence. Last chance, sweetheart, he said. Walk away. Tonight. Forget Ray. Forget Harold. Forget all this. Camille's breath came shallow and fast, but something inside her, something cold and fierce, snapped into place. She stared dead into Lenny's eyes. No, the word was a blade. Sharp. Final. Lenny's smile vanished. Wrong answer. The next second erupted like a storm. Lucas flipped the table, shouting, Down! As gunfire tore through the air. Bullets shattered sugar jars, ripped through vinyl seats. Marcus dragged Camille to the floor, covering her head as glass rained down. Lucas fired back, his gun barking flashes of light in the chaos. One of Lenny's men dropped, blood blooming across his chest. The other fired wild, rounds punching holes in the walls. Camille crawled on her hands and knees toward the kitchen, Marcus shoving her forward. Behind them, Lenny cursed, his boots pounding closer. "You can't hide, little lawyer," he roared. "Ain't no truth gonna save you now." Camille stumbled into the kitchen, heart slamming, eyes landing on a steel back door. She shoved it open into the rain-slick alley as more gunfire cracked behind her. Marcus burst through after her, dragging her toward the Lexus parked crooked under the buzzing street lamp. They dove inside just as Lucas's voice shouted something behind them, followed by another volley of shots, and then a scream that didn't sound like any lawman. Camille floored it, tires spinning, the alley flashing by in a blur of neon and rain. Her pulse thundered, her breath ragged, Lenny's words clawing at her skull. Harold made the call. Harold started it all. And deep down, beneath the panic and the fear, Camille felt something else blooming like poison. If her father really orchestrated that night, how much more had he done that nobody knew about? As the Lexus tore through the darkness, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was a voicemail alert. From Harold Johnson. Camille hit play with shaking fingers. Her father's voice filled the car low, cracked and heavy as a grave. "Baby, if you're hearing this, it means they told you. All of it? I need you to know. I did what I had to. But if you want the truth, you still ain't got the whole story. Ray ain't who you think he is. And neither am I," Static hissed. Then his last words crawled down her spine like ice. "Come alone. 451 Gratiot. Midnight or more blood spills." The message ended. Marcus swore under his breath. Camille gripped the wheel, her jaw set like stone. Midnight was 20 minutes away, and something told her that was where every lie, every secret, every drop of blood was about to come crashing down. Midnight draped Detroit in shadows as Camille's Lexus rolled to a stop outside an abandoned warehouse on Gratiot Avenue. The building loomed like a carcass, windows boarded, its rusted sign dangling in the wind. Rain slicked the cracked pavement, and the hum of the city felt 1,000 miles away. Marcus gripped the dashboard, his voice low and raw. "You're not going in there alone." "Yes, I am," Camille said, her tone like steel. "If they see you, they'll kill us both." Marcus shook his head hard. "You think they won't kill you?" "Maybe," she whispered, her eyes locked on the yawning doorway. "But if I don't walk in, Daddy dies tonight. And so do we." Before Marcus could argue again, she slipped out, her heels splashing in shallow puddles as she crossed the lot. Every step felt like walking into a grave. Inside, the air smelled of rust and old gasoline. Shadows stretched long across the concrete floor, broken only by a single hanging bulb swaying on its cord. Beneath it, Harold sat on a folding chair, wrists bound, his head bowed. His gray hair glowed like frost in the harsh light. Camille's breath caught. "Daddy?" His head lifted slowly. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something that terrified her more than fear. Resignation. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice low, cracked. "You told me to," she snapped, forcing her feet to move closer. "Now tell me the truth." "All of it?" A slow clap echoed from the shadows. Lenny stepped into the light, his grin wide and ugly, a pistol dangling from his hand like an extension of his arm. 2 more men flanked him, guns drawn, faces hard. "Well, well," Lenny drawled. "Family reunion. Warms the heart." Camille ignored him, her eyes locked on Harold. "Did you pay Ray to kill Charlie and Tony?" Harold's jaw tightened. "Yes." The word hit her like a fist, knocking the air from her lungs. She staggered back, her heels scraping against concrete. "Why?" Harold's voice was steady now, heavy with something darker than guilt, because they were going to kill me. And not just me, they'd have come for you. For your mama, for Marcus. I had two choices that night, bury them or bury us. Camille's hands shook, her throat closing tight. So you called Ray? I called the only man I knew could handle it, Harold said, and I've been paying for it ever since. Lenny's grin widened. Ah, touching. But see, here's where Daddy Dearest leaves out the best part. Camille turned on him, her voice a whip. Shut up. Lenny laughed, loud and cruel. Ray didn't just do it for loyalty. He did it for power. Harold gave him the keys to the kingdom. And guess what? Ray's been eating ever since. Every deal, every drop, every dollar Ray's hands all over it. Harold thought he walked away clean, but he just traded one devil for another. Her blood ran cold. You're lying, Lenny shrugged. Believe what you want, princess. But Ray? He's the reason your family's still breathing. And the reason it won't be for long if you don't pick a side. The echo of boots on concrete cut him off. From the far end of the warehouse, another figure emerged, a tall silhouette, moving slow, deliberate. The hanging bulb swayed as he stepped into the light. Raymond Butler. Rain dripped from his coat, scars flashing pale across his left hand as he raised a pistol, eyes locked on Lenny. You talk too damn much, Ray said, his voice smooth as steel. Lenny spun, gun snapping up, but Ray fired first. The shot cracked like thunder, and Lenny dropped, blood blooming across his chest. The two men with him froze just long enough for Ray to put another bullet in the first one's skull. The second bolted for the exit, boots pounding. The warehouse fell into silence, thick and choking. Ray lowered his gun slowly, his eyes shifting to Camille. You all right, baby girl? Camille's voice trembled, her fury boiling under fear. Don't call me that. You lied to me. Ray's smile was slow, sad, dangerous. I told you enough truth to keep you breathing. World ain't black and white, Camille. It's blood and gray. He glanced at Harold, who stared back with eyes like burnt coal. We done, old man? Ray asked. Harold's voice was gravel. Been done. Since the night you pulled that trigger. Ray smirked. You say that like you didn't make the call. Camille's stomach twisted. She looked between them. Two men bound by a secret older than her own life, a secret that had dragged her into hell. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, slicing through the rain. Blue and red lights flickered faintly against the boarded windows. Ray stepped back into the shadows, his grin flashing like a knife. You wanted the truth, Camille? Here it is. The law don't save nobody. It just picks who gets to die slow. And then he was gone, melting into the dark like smoke. Camille ran to Harold, fumbling with the ropes binding his wrists. We have to go, she whispered, her hands shaking. No, Harold said softly, his voice tired, final. You go. Tell Marcus I love him. Tell your mama I'm sorry. He cupped her face with trembling hands, his eyes wet, fierce. You're better than me, baby girl. Don't let this life drag you under. The siren screamed closer. Doors slammed outside. Boots pounded toward the entrance. Harold pushed her toward a side door. Just as the main doors burst open, and agents swarmed in. Guns raised, voices barking commands. Camille stumbled into the rain. Her vision blurred, her heart splintered into 1,000 shards. She didn't stop running until the lights were nothing but a distant glow in the storm. Epilogue. 3 weeks later, Camille stood on the steps of the courthouse, the wind cutting sharp against her coat. Her father had pled guilty to conspiracy and obstruction struck, a deal to keep Ray's name out of it. 20 years, maybe less with time served. Raymond Butler? Vanished like a ghost. Camille opened her phone, scrolling past messages from Marcus, from her mother, from colleagues who wanted to know when she was coming back to work. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she opened her notes app. The top line stared back at her, bold and burning. The truth isn't clean. It bleeds. She closed the phone, her jaw set like stone. Somewhere in this city, Ray was still out there. And part of her knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Not every story ends with justice. Some just stop where the paperwork does. But if you listened closely, this wasn't just about what happened. It was about what we ignore, the assumptions we let slide, the voices we tune out because they don't come in the right tone. Somewhere, someone's living with the fallout of this story, not as a headline, but as their everyday. So if this story stayed with you, don't let it fade. Shine it forward. Ask more. Doubt what's too quiet. Because what we choose to see or not see decides what happens next. Like, comment, share, not for clicks, but for clarity. Because awareness is how silence breaks and how truth finds daylight.